Good night, Belizeans at home and abroad. This is the Belizean Affairs Show number 415. 415. Tonight is Friday, and normally we try to do a constitutional hour on Friday, as well as case law and other legal matters. Uh, for tonight, we'll proceed as usual, which is to say a short prayer, after which we'll do our short biblical or scriptural reading. And I'll just go ahead and bow my head for a minute or so and say a short prayer. Divine loving Father, thou who art the creator of heaven and earth and all that in them are, thou who art our creator as well, we pray that thou mayest continue to be merciful unto us, that thou would give us wisdom, knowledge, understanding, endurance, courage, strength, perseverance, and a bit of fortitude to speak truth to power when need be. We pray that thou mayest accept our humble expression of gratitude and thankfulness today for having given us the privilege of life first and foremost, and for also having granted us the privilege to still be alive today among our family members, friends, and loved ones. We pray that thou mayest bless our country of Belize, its people and leadership, that thou would bless this country of the United States, its people and leadership, and that thou would bless the rest of humanity. Especially, we pray, loving Father, that thou be merciful upon those people who are in war zones and who are being killed for no justifiable reason. Sometimes we pray also that thou must bless those who have need of food and clothes and shelter, those who are going through all manner of suffering, people who are in a hurricane area, in flooded areas, in tornadoes, people who are also trying to survive in volcano areas and all kind of storm, man-made as well as natural. We pray, loving Father, that thou would bless our family members, each and every one of us, each and every one of them, as if they were mentioned by name and number. Thou knowest our hearts, our desires, even our most secret thoughts. We commend ourselves into thy hand, and whatever we have to say tonight, we pray that thou mayest bless this program, that it may accrue some positive public benefit to our people and country of Belize. For we ask these mercies in Jesus' name. Amen. Thank you very much. So far, I don't see any of my panelists in the background yet. We're starting a little late tonight, as everyone might notice. Uh, oh, um, Let me clear up something else that maybe needs to be done as a part of our house cleaning efforts. Because of the change of time here in the United States, uh, we end up we normally used to start our program at 6 p.m. and now we're starting our programs at 6:30 p.m. In other words, we're going forward half an hour to allow some of the people who are traveling from their work to be able to get home, especially during the commute hours. You know, sometimes those commute hours are very long and tedious, and sometimes by the time people get home, they're tired. They need a little, they need to relax. They need to get something to eat. So we're giving up half an hour of the time that we gain. And in regards to the issue of the time in Belize, since this is a Belizean focus program specifically, and more so than on anything else, which is the reason why it's called Belizean Affairs. Um, in Belize, it used to be like 2 hours difference. When we used to start our program at 6 o'clock, it used to be 8 o'clock back in Belize. So then it means that some people were getting home and getting ready to go to their bed to start their next day's work the following early morning when we were just actually starting. We'd go for 90 minutes, so we'd go from 8 o'clock to 9:30. By then, people should have probably been sleeping or be resting or whatever. So that was kind of tight. So that's the reason why we split the 1 hour that we gain. We start doing our program at 7:30 Belize time and 6:30 California time. So that's a little help. So for those of you who follow us on a regular basis, of course, there are those of you who follow us, the majority of our followers and people who listen to our program, um, do so at their own time and convenience. Why? Because the program is on YouTube, it's on um, Facebook, it's on Facebook Live, it's on my page, it's on a whole lot of different other platforms and other programs. Um, that being said, I would like to defer from some of that right now and fully in the rest of that at some other date because, like I said, I'm starting a little late tonight, later than the 6:30 that I told you we're supposed to be doing, and a little later than the 7:30 that we're supposed to be doing in Belize. So I was just trying to explain a little bit of that, and I need to cease and desist. Any more further explanation for right now, we'll take that up another time, probably on one of our other programs. But we need to get busy with the program for tonight. Uh, okay, uh, I did my prayer, right? Okay, let's do a short reading here. Let's find a little reading. That will just open the Bible and go to whatever book it opens at, and we'll take a reading from there. And see, we open at Ezekiel chapter 40. I'm just going to read one verse because the verse is a little lengthy. It says, in the in the 5 and 20th year of our captivity, in the beginning of the year, in the 10th day of the month, in the 14th year after that, the city was smitten. In the self same day, the hand of the Lord was upon me and brought me thither. So that's a little bit in the Old Testament there in Ezekiel chapter 20 verse, chapter 40 verse 1. And it was speaking about the city being smitten, and that the good Lord called upon Ezekiel to go down to the city and deliver a message. We won't get into all the details of that. It's a little bit more reading than I did. I only read one verse, so I won't expand on the whole chapter. I'll just leave that there. And in the interest of time, I'm just going to ask that you allow me to put live on another part of the what we broadcast or program. So some of the other people who are expecting to have their opportunity. Um, okay, let me just put this live for a second here. So I'm trying to get. No, I'm not trying to get here. Okay, here we go. I'm just trying to put this. So we're live. Let's see, and we'll let that be for right now. I'll deal with the rest of that after the show is finished. Okay. Um, uh, spare me a second. I'm trying to locate some information here that I needed, and it's just taking a few seconds more. One more. Here we go. Let's see. Let's see. Need to go to item number. Let's see what page it is. Recommendation 50. Let's see. Let's see. Okay, just give me a minute, please. I'm searching for something here. Okay. What page number is it here? Or 5. Okay. I need to go for the 5 to get the executive. Tonight we'll be talking about the executive and the executive powers. Basically, we'll do a correlation of what we have spoken to on the last 3 occasions that we dealt with this subject matter, the executive, uh, and we're going to deal with it now. The way we dealt with it before the last 2 or 3 occasions is that we were dealing with it strictly from the Constitution itself. Why? I was trying to provide some context for those who may not have had a constitution available to them and or who may not necessarily knew what the constitution was speaking to in regards to those particular matter, which is why I did those teachable moments. I think it was 2 or 3 times in a row, specifically dealing with the executive power of Belize. And I presume that by now most people understand what I mean when I say the executive power of Belize rests in the head of state. Uh, I'm not going further than that for right now. I'm trying to get to this specific recommendation 15. I think it's recommendation for some. Oh, oh, 50, okay. Okay, let's see, 50. Page 15, I think it's 45, no, page 45. Page 45. Before the channel, we dealt with the channel before. And tonight we're going to deal with the executive. Okay. Okay, here I got it. Um, you may recall, okay, um, okay. For those of you who have been following our teachable moment efforts about the Constitution, you would recall that the reason why we started this teachable moment, specifically based on the Constitution on Fridays most of the time, is because of the fact that the government that is in place currently on its second term had attempted earlier in its first term to try and dispense with the Constitution of Belize and to create or establish a new constitution that would be more pliable to their needs and liking. So they went about hauling, pulling the system and trying to get the Governor General to sign over her powers to them so that they can play possum with the Governor General and her purview, as I spoke about on our last Friday presentation, and about how they try to get her to sign off on what they put together as an act, but which was actually an act that was passed in the House of Representatives with the intent to commit sedition. And by the Governor General having assented to that seditious act, she could find herself in a pickle as well for attempting to convey or giving the impression that she was assenting to and conveying powers to subordinate officers of hers for them to commit treason and sedition with her blessing, which, as I expounded and clarified previously, she does not have any powers to grant them or to assent to them, her subordinate officers, the opportunity to eviscerate her position and or her office. That power is reserved to the head of state and was not given to her. So, for all intents and purposes, she cannot assent to a PCC act, which, according to them, she actually did assent to the PCC act, by which they have stipulated that they want to eviscerate her position and the position of the head of state, because she does not have those powers and she cannot give them any assent of powers to eviscerate her own boss, at whose pleasure she serves. And the power reserved to the head of state in terms of disbanding and dissolving the head of state does not rest in the Governor General. So for those Belizeans who again keeps insisting in this canard that the Governor General is just a figurehead or a rubber stamp, I'm giving you news again apparently, because maybe I'm saying something that you may not have been aware of. For as many times as you have been told so by me and many others, but you still want to live in this special world or this special environment where you believe that your belief constitute the constitution of the country, rather than you believing in the constitution. They're not one and the same. So anyhow, let me stop bantering and get to the essence of what I'm trying to focus on. So the present government put together a group initially by the name of the um, Constitution Reform Commission, and we flagged them for that because of what they were attempting to do. So they decided they would change the name, and then they will call it the People's Constitution Commission, as if the people had asked them to put a constitution reform group together so that the people can reform their constitution. That is not a request made to the government. That is an undertaking that the government decided to go ahead with after they were elected. They didn't tell the people that they want to be elected to undertake that particular effort. Otherwise, people would have laughed them out. Anyhow, I need to move a little faster than I'm going right now, but I can't move as fast as I would like to, because at the same time I got to remember that these teachable moments have a purpose. It's not just about reading the material and getting over the material and just be over with the show. This is not just a show in the sense of being a show for show's sake. There's a purpose to this madness. And that purpose is to prepare you, the Belizean people, the masses at that, who needs to be able to learn and understand these things that you weren't born knowing or understanding, and nobody else had taught you or tried to help you to learn. And in some instances, when other individuals indulge in this particular endeavor, they did so with devious intent and with malicious, and I would say, let me not get that far yet. I'm still early in the show. I don't want to go off on a tangent. I don't want to, allow myself to start being aggravated and throw my aggravation all over the place. To those of you who are spending your valuable time trying to listen to what I have to say, I need to make it as cogent and as easy to relate to and or to understand. and therefore I need to contain some of my own emotions when I'm dealing with this matter. As I said, the people didn't ask for this, but it's been fostered on them. It's been forced on them to the point where, like I said, the government went to the House and requested that the House pass a rule, regulations, and or uh, what they deemed at the time to be an act. Of course, you know what an act is in terms of, when the House want to change a law, an existing law, they go to the House and they create an act, either to disable the existing law and or to create a new law. Now, the laws that the House makes are what we call substantive law. Again, tonight is a constitutional night. It's a legal and, you know, uh, lawful and precedence review purpose. So I'd like to say again, the laws that are made by the House of Representatives constitute what the Constitution classify as substantive laws. That is, to amend certain portion of the Constitution and or to create new laws to enable the government to function or carry out its executive functions to manage the country. But those functions must be done lawfully, legally, and constitutionally. They cannot be done violating the Constitution or the law. In other words, the executive cannot violate the law because they are the executive. They're under the same laws that govern the country. The Constitution is the primary and supreme law of the land, as stipulated in Section 2 of the Constitution of Belize. And if any other law, such as those substantive laws that the executive takes to Congress and have the Congress make and pass into law, if any of those laws are inconsistent with the Constitution, can anyone tell me again what happens then? I guess by now, most people should be able to at least retort back the answer to that question that I asked just now, right? But it's an ask and answered question, and I'm going to go ahead and provide the context for the answer, and that is that if any other law is inconsistent with the Constitution, that other law, to the extent of its inconsistency, is void. So they could make a million different laws that are voidable. And their intent to try and make it be lawful, legal, and constitutional amounts to nothing more than their effort being wasted, because the law cannot, any such law that they make cannot trump the Constitution. And there are only certain parts of the Constitution that they're entitled to eviscerate or to change, modify, and do whatever they want to do, so long as they have the correct numbers in the House. They can deal with those particular laws. But that's not one and the same as to say that they can deal with all laws the same way. There are some laws that they can modify, change, or even dispense with and create new legislation to replace those particular laws. And then there are some other laws that they cannot touch unless they get permission from the people by way of a referendum. In other words, those are powers that are reserved to the people, to the plebiscite, and only with the acquiescence of the people, granting the executive the authority to be able to modify those laws and or transgress those laws, then they're able to do so. Other than that, they're acting then as scofflaws. They are violative of the Constitution, and they're acting unlawful and illegal. Basically, they're acting like scums. Okay. Uh, After they went and they passed this act in the House, it is presumed that the Governor General seal was attached to the law, which according to them then made it legal, lawful, and constitutional. As I stipulated earlier, if they make a law that is violative of the Constitution, it's null and void. And I've been telling them for the longest now, when they went and made that particular law, it was null and void, but they still continue pursuing it anyhow because they're going to do what they want to do. They're the government. According to them, they are empowered to commit crime, to do just about what they want because they are the government. The hell with any stinking laws as far as they're concerned. They are the lawmakers. They make the laws and they decide what is the law and what is not the law. But as usual, I have news for them and I've said it to them multiple times. The executive is only one of three branches of our government. We're living in a democracy, and our system of governance requires three separate functions or branches of our governance, such as the executive, the judiciary, and the legislative, all of whom have their own powers authorized unto them by the Constitution. And it is not the power of the executive to deem any law that they want to break as being, breakable, or as them having the right and the privilege or the authority to go ahead and break those laws. Because once they do so, they're acting illegal. No member of the executive or any other person below them is above the law. They have to abide by the laws. Uh, as I said, somehow or another, the seal of the Governor General assented for that act to be perceived as legal, lawful, and constitutional when they are not. And for those of you who have listened to our program enough, by now you will realize that because I've said it to you and I've showed it to you constitutionally. I've cited the specific parts of the Constitution that they are in breach of, and I've cited how is it that they can correct those breaches. But as regards to this recommendation that is coming to the Prime Minister now as a result of the exercise done by the People's Constitution Commission, which unto itself is another bogus effort. When they went and created that act, the act was to help cover them so they can get some funds out of the consolidated funds of the country, out of the not the budget, but out of the treasury, basically. And in order for them to get those funds to finance those millions of dollars to finance the People's Constitution Commission and their effort, they had to go ahead and attempt to legalize it. But what they were after was to commit sedition. And I said it before they started, I said it when they started, I've said it after they started, and I've said it now that they are finished. For all intents and purposes, the issue of eviscerating the Governor General's office and powers, as well as the office of the head of state and powers, and to usurp those powers, by one means or another, amongst the sedition. Basically, they have to overthrow the state and dispatch the head of state for that undertaking to be successful. That cannot happen just by them going to the House of Representatives and making a rule or a law or some kind of a statement and then unto themselves, they're going to deem whatever they come up with as being legal, lawful, and constitutional, because that's the purview of um, the, 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 the judiciary. It is the judiciary that deems or determines what is lawful, legal, or constitutional, not the House of Representatives, not the lawmakers, and not the executive, or for that matter of fact, the Prime Minister or any member of cabinet. I need to turn this thing sideways. Yeah. Okay. So we dealt with this matter, like I said, strictly from the Constitution before. Now we're going to deal with it, and you're going to see why is it what I'm saying makes the sense that I've always been saying. That is that these jackals have been playing fast and loose with the original effort that they established to try and do. Okay? They wanted to make some changes in the Constitution, but those changes, they could not reach the level of making those changes other than to bury those changes into additional changes, so that people don't recognize that they've been hoodwinked. Because they come directly to the people with what is it that they wanted to have done. The people will chase them out of judge. So what they did, they pile up a whole lot of recommendations, 100 and odd, and they will not put one or two of the most important ones for the public to vote on. And I'm definitely sure they're not going to put all of those things out there for the people and the public to vote on, which is required constitutionally if they really want to make an attempt at these changes that they're trying to put out there. Because when they come to the public, if they do for a referendum, they're not going to bring the whole package, 100 and odd different recommendations, and give it to the people so the people could study it, read it, learn it, understand it, and then decide whether or not it makes any sense to them or if they have any interest in it. No. They're going to come with a couple of smart statements and hope that the people will just believe in them substantively enough and trust them enough, despite all the ill will that they have displayed towards the people of the country so far. At every step of the way, they have been acting onerous, disdainful, and dismissive of public affairs and public issues. Part of the recommendation that was given to the Prime Minister, under Part 5 of that recommendation, it says the executive, and I'm going to read one of the recommendation right now under that group relating to the executive, and it's going to be recommendation number 50, recommendation number 63. 63. It says establishment of the executive authority. Now, anyone who knows the history of Belize or know anything about Belize know that currently there's an executive power and authority that is vested in the head of state as per what the Constitution stipulates, which I've read numerous times before. The executive authority of Belize is vested in the head of state, who may delegate some of those authorities to the Governor General, who may allow subordinate officers to her to exercise some of those powers, as in the case of the Prime Minister and any other minister member of cabinet, and or any department of the government to provide any functions for which the government needs to perform or provide services for the people of the country and to run the country. Okay? So we don't need to go and establish no executive authority right now. It exists for all intents and purposes. That's basically what I was saying just now. Uh, so under number 63, one as per their recommendation, it reads as follows: to repeal section 36(1) of the Constitution of Belize and replace it with open quotation, the executive authority of Belize is vested in the Prime Minister. I'm killing time to let that sink in. But hopefully, after I say what I'm about to say, what I had been saying before would make the sense that I hope it would have made then, if people were paying attention and had known enough before I read what I read. Because these recommendations are not out in the public right now for the public to learn, understand, and know anything about. It's many months now since this recommendation was submitted by the People's Constitution Commission to the Prime Minister. And he have it somewhere on his desk or in some drawer or behind his cabinet or in some, he has that recommendation either in an electronic format and or in a hard copy format that he has to study and figure out whether or not these recommendations are what he was expecting when he embarked on this project, or if they're not what he expected, then according to what the act stipulates, then the Prime Minister can either take what he wants to the cabinet and discuss it and decide whether or not it's substantive enough for them to have a plebiscite on, or for them to take it to the House of Representatives for the House of Representatives to vote on. Because I keep reminding you when we do these teachable moments, the House of Representatives is already empowered to act, to make laws, to amend laws, and to do whatever is constitutionally correct for them to do on behalf of the people. They're not authorized to break the laws or they are not authorized, in another way of saying it, to tamper with the Constitution, or they're not allowed or authorized to make laws that are violative of the Constitution, just in order to have those laws facilitate their devious intent, efforts, or malignant conduct. In other words, they can't legalize unlawful conduct or unlawful behavior or illegal conduct or illegal behavior or unconstitutional efforts. Nobody in the country is above the Constitution. No entity in the country is above the Constitution. Anyhow, let's proceed. So let's put this piece in context here. That why I stopped. I didn't finish up reading the whole of that section. Okay, I stopped to let it sink in, and then I proceeded to try and explain why I was stopping and why I wanted the matter to sink in that I had read. Recommendation number 63, section 1 says, repeal section 36, subsection 1 of the Constitution of Belize and replace it with the executive authority of Belize, in quotation, is vested in the Prime Minister, who is head of state and head of government, who chooses 12 ministers who shall form the cabinet. Now, we currently have a Prime Minister, right, in Belize. It's an asked and answered question, right? The answer is in the question itself. We currently have a Prime Minister. We also currently have a head of state. I'm definitely sure, as of right now, nobody in Belize would believe or should believe that the Prime Minister is the head of state or that the head of state is the Prime Minister. They're not one and the same. They're two different offices, constitutional office at that. And the Prime Minister sits far below the seat, the power, or the authority of the head of state. It is the head of state that the Prime Minister has to come to after being elected as a majority, for that head of state to assent to the Prime Minister, for him to be able to exercise some of the head of state executive powers as a subordinate officer. And that subordinate officer, the Prime Minister, has another person between him and the head of state, which is the Governor General, who serves at the pleasure of the head of state and who deals with matters that the Prime Minister needs to have ascension to or assistance or help with, for him to be able to exercise some of those powers that the Governor General can allow him or her as Prime Minister to exercise. It doesn't say they shall exercise those powers. The Constitution says specifically they may exercise those powers. The Governor General may allow them to exercise those powers, for which they come to her for ascension. Without her ascension and then signing and doing their oaths, swearing allegiance and doing their oaths of governance, they cannot enter into the office to be prime ministers and or to be ministers of any government department or any government function. They first have to be assented. But this stuff that they're saying here, please get it and get it good, because it's important for us to get it good. They want to repeal the current section 36 of the Constitution, subsection 1, and replace it with the executive authority of Belize is vested in the Prime Minister. When the Constitution already tells you the executive power of Belize is vested in the head of state. That power is not vested in the Prime Minister. It's vested in the head of state. And the head of state can delegate some of those authorities to the Governor General, who may allow some of her subordinate officers, such as the Prime Minister and other Minister of Cabinet and other head of departments, to exercise some of those governance powers. They may. It doesn't say they shall, but that they have to. And it doesn't say that they cannot. Because once they are assented to with that power, they may. Not shall, they may. Two different things. A shall and a may and could or would or have to are short terms in the English language that, when applied within the context of legality and lawful context, have different meaning. Some are based on command. A person is commanded to do certain things. Others are based on the fact that they may. It's a conditional case or scenario where they may, by virtue of having been granted that privilege or that power or authority, or that they shall, which means it's a command. They have to. They are mandated. So may, shall, could, they're all different. So you can have a prime minister who is, according to this writing that they're putting here, is the head of state, when the prime minister is not occupying the position of head of state as well as that of the governor general and also that of the prime minister. There's no such animal in the Constitution of Belize. And even if they were to write it right now as they're writing it here, and for some reason or another this craziness was to come into existence by some kind of miracle, right? Or by them just speaking it and it becomes so, there will never ever be a prime minister in Belize that is also the head of state. So they are playing with words here. What we may have in Belize, after we become, according to them, the Republic of Belize, we will have probably a president of the Republic, of the future Republic of Belize. I should laugh at that because, I know where I'm coming from when I make that statement. Right? I'm being provocative. Because that's where they want to go, but they don't know how to get there. So they're trying to bamboozle us into taking us there with their puny, small-minded approach. There's so much of a scofflaw, and they rebuff the law, and they refuse to entertain the significance and the importance of the law and abide by it, to the extent that they're trying to pretend that the Constitution doesn't exist. Therefore, there's no guidance for them to be able to get to where they want to go. So they are just wrong and strong. And so one day, they'll go to the House and they'll pass this Section 63, subsection 1, into law, according to them. And then the Prime Minister will become Prime Minister, Governor General, and head of state. I'll tell you that when that day comes, before the ink is dry on that legislation, okay, the person who would have been Prime Minister as well as Governor General will cease to be Prime Minister and cease to be Governor General, and pretend that at that point then, because of the legislation, they don't need those two subordinate positions anymore. They can then act just as the head of state. And once the prime minister become head of state, he don't have no need for a governor general. He don't have no need for what you call it, a prime minister, because they're not going to become a republic like, let's say, okay, a good comparison would be like France, where you have a head of state who is the president, and that president elects or chooses a prime minister, and that prime minister then goes and chooses his members of cabinet, and that prime minister reports back to the head of state, which is Mr. Macron right now for France, right? As the example that we were using. The head of state is the head of state, and if the prime minister becomes the head of state, you don't have no need for him to actually also act as the prime minister. What they want is to capture the position of head of state locally, so that one of them can wear that cap. That's simply what's going on. But you're not. Let me keep the show clean. They don't have what it takes to be able to do it like, do it the right way. Then, uh, let me quickly read the rest of that little part, because I'm taking too long just verbalizing on that particular small section, and we have a lot to do tonight. I hope we have enough time left. Anyhow, so then it's clear to any Belizeans, at least as of right now, after this little short thing that I just pointed out, that the intent of the PCC Act was to actually eviscerate the position of the Governor General's office and authority, as well as eviscerate her boss's authority, but she don't have any authority reserved powers unto herself to help them get rid of herself and or her boss. She cannot assent to any such thing because she don't have the authority vested in her. In her writ and commission to be Governor General, those reserved powers to eviscerate the head of state or to eviscerate herself was not given to her. She serves at the pleasure of the head of state, and it is the head of state who holds in reserve the power to decide if and when the head of state needs to dismiss her from that office and to appoint somebody else to serve the head of state in that office. That is not the purview of the Governor General, and she cannot assent to giving that authority or power to the cabinet, to the Prime Minister or the cabinet, or to the House of Representatives, or to the Senate, or to no other authority. Okay? She's limited when it comes to that particular prerogative. It is not her purview. But these jackals, they want to, as they're saying here, open bracket, the executive authority of Belize is vested in the Prime Minister, who shall be the Prime Minister and who is head of state. I'm sure that the Prime Minister is not head of state yet, so this is irrelevant right now. And who and head of government. Who chooses his? Yeah, we've been through that. It's redundant. Let me go to this recommendation 63, subsection 2, and it says repeal section 36 2 of the Constitution of Belize, which is not stipulated here, and replace with subject to the provisions of this Constitution, the executive authority may be exercised on behalf of the people of Belize, either directly or through the Prime Minister, Deputy Prime Minister, or ministers, deputies, deputy ministers, or officers subordinate to the Prime Minister. I hope that clears up what I've always said was their intent, because it's right there in black and white, okay, in their own wording, part of their own recommendation. That was not a recommendation made by me. No, did I told them to go do that? I've been telling you, the Belizean people, for months and months and months now, years basically, why they started off that agenda and what is it that they were trying to achieve. Now they are telling you the very same thing that I was telling you. A lot of my colleagues was questioning me and wondering why is it that I was saying things as if I could read the people in my mind, and why don't I just, you know, make my own statement without having to pretend that I'm reading their mind. I don't have to give nobody no excuse to the fact that I'm capable of reading their mind. Because that's what I was doing. That's why I was being preemptive and pointing out ahead of time that they was going to arrive here. And they did arrive here in due time. Anyhow, I was going to get a little answer at face to just know, but I need to contain that because that's not necessary. I don't need to be gratuitous in that regard. Um, there's another section here, and then they want to repeal fully, eviscerate altogether this particular section of section 36, subsection 3, as well as repealing section 37 all the way to 39, which is a lot of reading and a lot of information. They just want to vanquish it. They just want to throw it out. They don't even want to write it and tell the people what is it that, they're just citing, making a citation. So how many Belizeans now would, if I were to just read this and say they want to repeal section 36, 3, as well as 37, 38, 39, all the way through 49. 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49. All of those sections of the Constitution, they want to eviscerate. Just pretend it never existed. That's the kind of power that these gentlemen would like to have, okay? Have and pull free constitution any which way they want, if and when they want, you know, and not to be held accountable, or not to have anything that blocks them or stop them, or that becomes a bar to frustrate their jackal efforts, right? Because basically, for all intents and purposes, what they're trying to do is hijack the powers of governance unto themselves. For all intents and purposes, that's basically what they're after. And this is not the only part of the Constitution wholesale that they're trying to eviscerate, as I said. This is what? 36, 36 and 36 to 49 is what? We're talking about 13 sections of the Constitution. They want to just disappear it. In other words, the Constitution might become a lot smaller. You'll probably be able to fit in your top pocket. According to these jackals, right? All the Constitution will say, or will need to say, is that the Prime Minister is not a Prime Minister anymore. They won't run for the office that is higher than the Prime Minister and even higher than the Governor General. They'll just run for the office of the head of state under the title of President. Then I got the guts to come out and tell you, Belizean people, that, I just tell you. And I tell you why I laugh, because the idiots are so untalented, like what the Prime Minister say. No, he the man say that Belizeans don't have talent, right? But he have enough talent to try hoodwink all the way and come and try grab the head of state powers from the head of state, so he could become the head of state. So he don't have to run for prime ministership anymore. He could become king forever. because that's what head of state at the point when they become prime minister in these modern societies. That's all they think about, how to stay in power for the rest of their lives, especially in republics. Right? Whoever have the power, who control the power, get to rule the country. It's not whoever have the right or the authority to rule the country legally, constitutionally. No, that's not how they think of it. They think about how to bamboozle us into letting them run the show on our behalf for their purposes. So I'll just skip that. You know, I mean, I have an urge to try and do justice to what these fools are trying to do here in terms of explaining further. But I mean, I'm just babbling and babbling, and probably I don't want to make it more difficult for people to really grasp the severity of what these people are trying to do. I'll just go on to the next recommendation after that. That was recommendation 64. I'll try and do recommendation. No, that was recommendation 63 just now that I just finished dealing with. That they were trying to throw out all those other sections of the Constitution. Now they're recommended under recommendation 64 to establish direct election for the Prime Minister. Why is it that they want to establish a direct election for the Prime Minister when in fact they are trying to capture the head of state position? They just told you above that they want to eviscerate the position and authority of the Governor General and the position and authority of the head of state, so that what we now call the Prime Minister would not be called the Prime Minister anymore. So what the hell are they talking about? Going back now and telling people that, oh, you're going to vote for a Prime Minister. That would be a recommendation if, or a valid recommendation, if they were trying to change what we have right now from the person who have the majority of the members of the House, parliamentarians, that person becomes then the designated prime minister. So if they want to run for a prime minister, there shouldn't be any problem with that. Somebody decide, okay, they want to run for that office, and that office is available, every 4 years, just like all the other members of Congress. Nothing wrong with that. Go run for it. Whoever wins, win. But if somebody win for the prime ministership under that circumstance, that is not controlling the members of the House of Representatives, then how the devil that person is ever going to have anything done or any laws enacted on in support of him if he's not part of the cabal, part of the mobsters, part of the gang, as they currently have it. They won't tell you, no, you're going to run for the prime minister because the prime minister will inherit all this power. Forget about the term prime minister in terms of all the power that they're trying to talk about. The prime minister cannot be the same head of state once you become the head of state. You select somebody else to become the prime minister. You don't run for prime minister and then you say, well, because you win for the prime minister, you are then also the head of state. No, you run for the position of head of state. You could call it prime minister if that's what you want to do, no? Or you could call it a president. Or you could call it any other name. You could call it king, you call it queen, you call it whatever you want to call it. Stop hoodwink the people, stop bamboozle the people, stop playing games with the people in the head. Tell the people what you're after. You're after acquiring and aggregating onto yourselves maximum power no accountability to anyone else other than yourself. As a matter of fact, the current prime minister has been running all affairs in our country of Belize as a dictator. Go back and look on the 414th show that we have done so far. Pick any one of them. And if you hear the prime minister name they're calling any one of them, check the issues that his name is being called upon or called about. Dictator behavior. So it's not like it's not recorded. It's not like it's not in black and white. And they were not gratuitous allegations. I would more classify any attribution to the prime minister that we have done on this show as a clamor for his rectitude and fortitude and correctness. We have to point out his shortcomings to him. That shouldn't be offensive to him for somebody to point out his shortcomings. He should welcome that. What he should do is act in such a way that those shortcomings don't define him or define his follow-up actions. That would be the smart thing to do. Don't get mad because somebody complains about the wrongs that you do. You're not hired to do wrong. You didn't offer yourself to do no wrong. You conduct into believing that as a prime minister or as a minister or as whoever or whatever any one of you politicians would like to classify yourself as, you tell the people you're looking after their affairs. And you refuse to do so. And then when people complain, then you want to get caught under the collar and pretend that you are more offended than the person that you're chancing or doing wrong. So they want to establish a process for allowing the prime minister to become elected. I presume that the qualifications to become the prime minister then will be, or to run for the prime minister position then, in order to eliminate the majority of the population. Because if anybody could just get up and run for the prime minister position then, right, as compared to how we used to do it before, if everybody could just get up and run, I know that there's at least 100,000 Belizeans that would like to take a shot at that possibility. All the other members of the party, of all the parties then, would like to run for that position of prime minister. But to run for that position of prime minister in that category then would mean that they have to run as a national ticket or run on a national election. It means that they have to run and gain the votes throughout the whole country as compared to just winning the votes in a particular division. And even that is not a problem or shouldn't be a problem. Does that mean then that only the people who have mass parties will be able to put up a candidate? Because I'll tell you right off bat, first thing will come out my mind is such a proposition would be unconstitutional in the first place. It's discriminatory. It would be discriminatory. I'm sorry, my throat is getting dry. Okay. It's unconstitutional, and it would be illegal, and it would not conform to the Constitution. So any such rule would be null and void. Because anybody then could take that particular matter to court in order for them not to be discriminated and for them to have their rights as a Belizean to run for those offices. I notice in some sections where they say, right now, in this proposal here, For anyone to run for a seat at the House of Representatives, you have to be 25 years and up. You wouldn't be able to be less than 25 years. So right there again, that's another discriminatory effort. You can vote when you're 18. You're classified as an adult when you're 18, and you have the right to exercise all Belizean rights at the age of 18. But the politicians don't want you as a competitor. So they will put rules and regulations in place to violate your constitutional right. And according to them, that should be all right. Anyhow, I know of some judges that would probably have a field day with any such proposition too, right? Because on the face of it, they're exposing what they're trying to do, which is to cut their competition short and get to a point where senators, you can only become a senator if you have served as a member of the House. And if you have served as a member of the House for 2 terms and you're termed out, then you can run for senator. And after you run for senator and you have won twice and you get termed out, then you can start run for prime minister. After all, it's the head of state that you're trying to run for. I don't know prime minister anymore, because that name prime minister will be, or title prime minister will be delegated to a subordinate officer of the head of state. It's like how the prime minister have a deputy prime minister. The head of state will have a deputy head of state. Belizeans, wake up. Stop making these knuckleheads them bamboozle, and have them, they play with sentiments on the political affairs, on the political powers, okay, that they accrue onto themselves, and then they turn around and they mistreat you for the next 5 years, only to come and give you only $50 when the next election come around, only a couple beer, a plate of food, and then after the election is gone or finished, you don't see them anymore. Okay? They are worried about minimizing their competition so that they could stay in the power, misuse, and abuse the resources of the country, and make laws that bind you, the members of the society, into compliance, while they do not live by those laws. They do not comply with those laws, nor do they make any laws to check them. How many of the politicians have you seen, members of a party that is in power, that has been taken and are judged for any of the crimes that they have committed, while you have other Belizeans committing those very same crimes who have been taken to court, are judged, and penalized under some of these onerous laws that these people make? And to say that the laws that they make are inconsistent with the Constitution. In other words, they're violating your constitutional rights. But you get to go to jail because you don't have money to pay a lawyer to defend your rights. So you only have a right, or your rights is only vindicated if you can afford it. While these jackals, they hide behind the purse of the treasury, and they defend all kind of criminal behavior for themselves, their colleagues, their friends, and family. Which of them have gone to jail? Not because they haven't committed the crime. Uh, under recommendation number 64, I got another 15 minutes to go, so I'll see if I can work on a little bit more of this recommendation 64. It says subsection 2, by the way, which is the section that I'm trying to go at now. It says the executive branch shall include the following functions and powers. This now remember, what I'm reading here is part of the submittal to the Prime Minister as recommendations. Okay, for them to substitute the existing constitution with, or to eviscerate the existing constitution as pointed out in the previous section 63, and many other parts that we have not covered yet, or hopefully we may get to cover before they decide to spring this issue on the public and ask the public to weigh in with a referenda, or that maybe they might just take it to the House and pass a law, pass it into law, without giving the people their constitutional right to weigh in. Because they also threw that in as a afterthought in the PCC Act. I don't know how many Belizeans are aware of that, but it's right there. It says there shall be a referendum, but if what the PCC recommends is not substantive enough, then they don't have to have a referendum. They can just continue on with the powers that is currently vested in them to just alter the parts of the Constitution that they deem necessary and move on. And all these millions of dollars that they spend to do a half, I can't say what I want to say. Um, to do a batched up job, then basically. The PCC did a batched up job of the effort that they were paid millions of dollars to do. The money is spent, the time is expired, the job was not completed adequately. So they turned around and just gave the Prime Minister whatever they could have given him to complete the cycle. And these recommendations is what I'm trying to take to task. Read them to you, the public, to let you get an idea of what is it that's in that recommendation, and hopefully for you to be able to think it through. Because these jackals have a habit of going to the House, making a law in one day, and while they're supposed to read that law 3 times before it becomes law, they make the reading of that law 3 times in that one day, when in fact the Constitution requires them 90 days in between the reading. But how many Belizeans have objected to what has become now their standard practice? Very few. In fact, even some of the members of Parliament on the opposition side, who should be taking these matters to task in the House, when they come and read those matters 2 and 3 times on the same day. It is not constitutionally practical or acceptable. Because the reason why they're supposed to read the matter in 3 different readings with space or time in between is to afford the other members of the legislature an opportunity to hear what the proposed legislation is, and be able to go home or go to their offices within a few days or weeks' time and prepare themselves to come back and submit materials to the clerk of the House that they would like to have in terms of modifying or altering the proposals. And the Constitution requires them 90 days between the first and last reading. But that's not being abided by the present majority in the House, or the leader of the House. What they do is they go and read this thing, like I say, in one day, 3 different readings, and it's over with. Nobody had no time to object or to submit no difference of opinion or different concepts or whatever, or question nothing. As a matter of fact, they don't even get the information till almost the same day, sometime before they are discussed. The morning when the matter is supposed to be discussed, that's the time when they are going to give copies out. That's to show how unassed. But anyhow, let me just go ahead and read. I think that was subsection 2 of section 30. Was no, okay. I think it was 37 or 38. It should be 37 because we just dealt with 36 just now, and we will. Um, but anyhow, we read 60, recommendation number 64.1, subsection 1, and we were reading recommendation 64, subsection 2, where it says the executive branch shall include the following functions and powers. Under paragraph A, it says the Prime Minister acts as the head of state. He should not be acting as the head of state. He is the head of state. He runs for a countrywide office as the Prime Minister. And what they need to do is take out this term as Prime Minister here and say the head of state. Go, be honest with the people. Tell the people exactly what is it that they're trying to do and give the position the correct title. People are used to the Prime Minister, and they are now trying to get off with this idea that the current Prime Minister is also the current head of state. That's basically, for all intents and purposes, what they're trying to do. People to get used to the idea that the Prime Minister is head of state. Because that's how some of the people that I have this discussion with behave and come off, that the Governor General is just a figurehead. The Prime Minister is the head of state. The Prime Minister is the ultimate authority and power in the country. The head of state currently is also a figurehead as far as they are concerned. But the way they're trying to bamboozle the people into believing, they propagate these fictions and and it's deliberate. It amounts to malfeasance, but it's deliberate. It's not an oversight or an omission or just an error. Outright bamboozling. But I need to finish up this little part here because time is getting away, and I'm down to 8 minutes, 7 minutes right now. Yeah, 7 minutes. So they say the Prime Minister acts as the head of state. It should be saying the Prime Minister would act as the head of state. This is a proposal that they're submitting. Okay? So they got to add the correct wording to make it say exactly what is it that they're attempting to say. When you shortchange and leave out words, when you're drafting legal documents, such as a constitution or constitutional remodeling or a new law or whatever, there's what you call legal draftsman or draftsperson. It's a category, it's a professional category that serves a specific purpose, that is to draft legal documents, and in this case, constitutional documents. And the people that does that particular job are supposed to be a lot smarter than myself or capable than myself in terms of putting together legal documentation. They need to pay the right person to do the job. You can't have a just come yesterday person, how I'm pulling a constitution for a country and writing all kind of hullabaloo in there. That doesn't make legal sense. In the legal profession, there's what you call legal jargon. It's the same English words that we use on a day-to-day basis, back and forth as we communicate with each other. But there are certain procedures, practices, and protocols that need to be abided by when it comes to legal drafting, because it makes a difference. That's why lawyers take cases to court and based on their legal capacities, Harlan pulled the law to the point of winning a case that had no merits, or in some instances where people lose a case that had full merits. Why? Because the legal drafting was such that some of the slick lawyers then, play games with the system and the court. And if the stuff is not properly drafted, then you can't blame the lawyer, for insisting that that's not what the drafted piece of um, law or intended law was supposed to be saying. If it's not saying the right thing and it wasn't properly drafted, then anyhow, I'm getting off into another different area. Uh, so the Prime Minister acts as head of state and the commander in chief of all the armed forces, whose offices or officers he shall commission. He is responsible implement for implementing and enforcing the laws, which is not true, passed by the National Assembly before the execution of his office. He shall take the following oath or affirmation as prescribed by Schedule X, open bracket, stating that I do solemnly swear, open quotation, open bracket further, or affirm, swear or affirm that I will faithfully exercise or execute the office of the Prime Minister of Belize and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend Belize and the Constitution of Belize. Currently, they are not doing that. Currently, that is what is required of them to do. But look at the Bunau scenario. Look at the um, Portugal scenario. Look at the Belize port scenario. Look at the Feinstein port scenario. You could go right down the list from the time these guys have been in office. Look at the scenario. The first thing they did, contravening the laws of the land and the Constitution when they first got elected, was to go and take away 10% of all the employees of the government salary. That's illegal. The Constitution says you're not supposed to take people's private property. And you cannot work people for a certain salary and refuse to pay them the salary that you have bargained to pay them for. All of those things are contravention of the Constitution, not to say the least about personal constitutional rights being breached. But again, these people are just a bunch of jackals, man. At the end of the day, let me read paragraph B. I'm almost at the end. We have, what is it? 23. Yeah. So we got about 6 more minutes to go. And it's a lot of reading under this particular recommendation. I think I should just, let me see if I can just read them all off, or read off as much as I could before the time is up, and try and avoid making commentary. Let me see if I can be helpful in that regards. Okay, so paragraph B reads as follows. The Prime Minister shall nominate, subject to the approval of the Senate by simple majority, all ministers, Attorney General, deputy ministers, chairmen of government statutory boards, chairmen of commissions, heads of departments, governor of the central bank, judges, magistrates, ambassadors, and other officials who are vetted and approved by the majority of the Senate of the National Assembly, says full stop. Goes on to say no persons appointed no persons appointed by the Prime Minister shall be a member of the National Assembly. In this case, we have people right now that are members of the Assembly, currently members of the Assembly, who are functioning in somebody's, but it says uh, no person appointed by the Prime Minister shall be a member of the National Assembly. And that's a contravention because it says that he appoints the members of cabinet and all the other previous members that are just stipulated above, unless they're going to exempt those people from being able to serve in those capacities. That is, that no member of cabinet can be a member of the House. I don't know how that will sit. But anyhow, like I said, let me just run through this thing now. A lot of discussions need to be had about those. This is paragraph C. The Prime Minister shall receive heads of state, ambassadors, and other public ministers, and he shall have power subject to uh, subject to the approval of the Senate to make treaties, conventions, covenants, agreements, protocols, regional and international agreement organizations, provided two-thirds of the senators present two-thirds of the president of the senators present. That probably it doesn't specify, but it probably means in a particular meeting or whatever, concur and approves each agreement. All those things need to be fleshed out and clear and clarified. These are proposals, but you know, it's just somebody's idea. It's not really um, legally structured the way it needs to be structured and clarified. But I'll leave it alone. The office of the Prime Minister shall consist of his chief of staff, the immediate staff, the office of finance, management and budget, and the office of trade. Full stop. So it goes on to say he shall provide a budget for approval by the National Assembly, and each minister shall provide full report on all activities of their ministries to the National Assembly at the end of every fiscal year. Uh, Paragraph E, as in egg. The Prime Minister may issue executive orders. So it doesn't say shall issue, it says may. It's a conditional proposition. The Prime Minister may issue executive orders which directs executive officers or clarify regulations, statutory instruments subject to the approval of the National Assembly to further existing laws. That will require a lot of discussion because, like I say, I'm just reading it through for right now. At some point in time, we might have an opportunity to come back and flesh out a little bit more or debate a little bit more. I'm over 34. Oh, wow. Yeah, I hasn't even covered. I was just almost at the end. Good, good, good. Oh, okay. Let me just read this last one, paragraph F. He, the Prime Minister, shall sign bills passed in the National Assembly into law as an act, or he can let the bill die for 10 days, then it becomes law, or he can veto the bill and send it back to the National Assembly, which requires a vote of two-thirds majority to pass and become law. Now, based on what I understand and know about governance and governance affairs and practices, procedures, and protocols, I don't think any of those recommendations will have a problem other than the fact that they need to be fleshed out, clarified, and they need to be enumerated for proper citation purposes so that they can be effectively challenged in court, and or if they were to become law, that the lawyers themselves and the judges themselves would be able to cite them and accept them as being valid and clear enough citations or constitutional uh, principles or precepts. And that's the end of that recommendation number 64. So, and it's the end in terms of just having read it through. But as I said, it requires a lot of fleshing out. That cannot happen tonight. We're out of time already. And hopefully at some other future date we'll delve into some of those and clarify them a little further. These people are taking us for a ride, and unless we are able to see through the veil and understand what they're after, we're going to get hoodwinked. I've been saying that from the beginning. I've been saying it all the way through. I'm still saying it now, and I'll probably end up saying it quite a bit more by the time they get to the point of giving us the opportunity for us to weigh in, if they decide to do that. Because remember what they did, as I told you. These conjurers went ahead and put into that document that they don't even have to come to us anymore. They can just on their own decide how they want to carry through this matter. They put out a whole lot of candies or candy paper out there for us, the Belizean people, to grab up this candy paper thinking that there's candy in the paper, only to find out that we've been had. Don't believe me? Try and believe your own lying eyes and your ears, because that's what they are telling you. Your eyes and your ears is not affording you the truth or what's right or correct. Don't believe, you know, what your eyes and your ears is telling you or informing you. Believe what they are trying to get you to accept. And after that power is acquired, if they were to acquire it, they'll eat with supper, as well as with lunch, and as well as with dinner. Belizeans at home and abroad, this was the Belizean Affairs show number 415. Again, I was your chairman, Leonard Brackett. I hope I did justice to your time spared to listen to this other presentation of another teachable moment in regards to the Belize Constitution. We don't expect that you will learn and understand and know these things overnight, because even senior lawyers, not just regular lawyers, that just come out of college or out of law school, but that are just 1 or 2 year practicing. I'm talking about senior lawyers, some whom have become attorney generals, and others who have occupied other high positions and become judges in our legal system in Belize, formerly British Honduras. They have, in some instances, deliberately hand pulled our legal system and given us less than what we deserve. Not because they couldn't do better, as in the case of the current Attorney General, whom I'm going to flag again for his shortcomings. And I don't care if you want to get vexed. If you don't like that I'm complaining about his shortcomings, then do his next best. Shape up or ship out. Or call me to question. But don't expect me not to say something about his shortcoming. Because when he was just a common, I shouldn't, I don't want to derogate. I was going to say when he was just a common lawyer, then, as if that is an offense, no? Wishing some of these guys would take it as an offense. But let me just go ahead and use that same phraseology. When he was a common lawyer, the man won a very important constitutional case. And his advocacy was on behalf of the Constitution, as we all know it to be, or most of us know it to be, or some of us know it to be. And the man was emphatic and very loyally and successful at defending the civil rights of some police officers when they were being discriminated against because of how their picky head look. Some people might think that they go up on the rail, they get personally offensive. I'm not. I also talk as raw as I could to get the point across as succinct or as effectively as I can. Sometimes trying to use nice words or sweet words or whatever doesn't make the point. I'm trying to make a specific point. Our current Attorney General, as far as I'm concerned, is a scumbag. Because the man, when he was a humble, ordinary lawyer, like I said, without the title of Attorney General attached to his humble practice at the time, the man was able to advocate on behalf of some people and successfully win a serious, critical, legal, lawful, and constitutional case on behalf of his client. Only to now turn around, because he now has the powers attached to, and the title attached to his name of Attorney General, to contravene and dismiss everything that he had set in stone before, by virtue of having won that particular case, which was a seminal legal case and became what you'd call a stare decisis law or a settled law in that particular instance. Okay? Now for the gentleman to turn around because he have this title attached to his name, he won't turn around and dismiss everything that he had done, the case that he had won. He's now, because of the position and the money where they get, they advocate on behalf of a bunch of scoundrels and scumbags. He gonna pretend that, well, he have to, in his present capacity, he have to go with the wrong and defend the wrong when he know what's right and had defended what was right. Basically, the man now is singing for his supper. So he throws away his credibility. He throws away. I mean, I could go in many different ways in terms of what all the gentleman threw away. While he's hiding behind the position of Attorney General and pretending that he has to do wrong now to anybody that he has to do wrong to, because now he's defending a different perspective. Hell, man, do you have no decency left? Do you have no professionalism left? Do you have no ethics left? Or no morals, for that matter of fact? Is the salary you're getting or the position you're now holding more important Belizeans at home and abroad, I'm getting personal. Let me just uh, forego any more of that particular rant. Um, I can make these guys do what's right or what they need to be doing. They have a right to not be bothered or not be disturbed, and or they have a right to choose to not do good and to do bad. I don't have no right or authority vested in me or any power to force them to do otherwise. But it's still sad all the same. Why? People are getting hurt. Innocent people are getting hurt who can't fight back, who doesn't have the treasury at their disposal to look after their basic civil rights. While these jackals are taking chance of people, and like I said, we're beyond our time for the show. Uh, all I want to say is good night, Belizeans at home and abroad. Thank you for your time spared, and hope that whatever I had to say tonight, even though while a bit of it may have been cantankerous, at least some parts of it may have been salvageable in terms of the citation, the constitutional citations, constitutional reference, the reading of the constitutional um, issues or the addressing of some of those issues, and the comparing of those issues in regards to how the Constitution speaks to those issues as compared to how these jackals are trying to make the new or future Constitution that they're trying to put in motion speak to how those issues are supposed to be spoken to. I don't wish them no success in their agenda or their endeavor. I wish they would all just fail, fall on their faces as regards to achieving the objective that they set out to achieve it in the first place. And I will give them hell at every step of the way, morning, noon, and night, for their deviousness and the damage and the hurt that they're putting on my country and people of Belize. Again, I say good night, Belizeans at home and abroad. My name is Leonard Brackett. I hosted your 415th program, and we hope that you'll review it at your own time and convenience. Good night.